Season 14 has been absolute chaos so far, but the best kind of chaos as there's a ton of hype for League across the board. With plenty of returning players, the LEC going crazy on its opening weekend and the meta itself being incredibly unpredictable. Patch 14.1b also brought in some balance changes quickly after the initial patch, with plenty of buffs and nerfs to champions and items to help the biggest winners and losers of the patch so far. But before we get into the tier list, comment below how your climb is going so far. Are you beasting it and farming LP, playing well but can't climb, or are you just having a tough time in general? I am loving the new season so far, but I am an AD carry main, so pray for me. Now we're going to start off with the top lane, and let's just say this may have been the most unpredictable role of all. We knew AP champions were going to be strong across the board, but they were so strong that even in the top lane they are dominating the meta. Champions like Singed, Mordekaiser, Kayle and Teemo were insanely OP in 14.1, and to be honest, despite a few nerfs, they're still OP in 14.1b. A lot of this just comes down to their AP itemization. Singed has way too many OP items, Teemo is face melting teams with shrooms, and Kayle's pretty much the same as she's always been at level 16, just with tons more damage. Then we've got those tanks, and they're just not quite as strong as we first thought they'd be. Malphite and Ornn are still solid A tier picks, but Poppy's the only one that stays in the S tier, and that's because she has more build versatility in general, more AD damage options too. Fighters and bruisers have kind of fallen somewhere in the middle. Some of them like Aatrox and Jax are still S tier picks, but champions like Fiora, Camille and Darius don't feel as strong as we'd expected. Fiora's Ravenous Hydra setup just feels a bit clunky compared to the Assassin version in Profane Hydra, and Camille hasn't been flying as high as the likes of Jax. One trick and counter picks like Rengar, Riven, Rumble and Vayne are also super solid in the top lane, and we've got these in the A tier because you do need to pick them in the right matchups, and you do kind of need to know what you're doing to pull them off consistently. Split pushing Titans from last season in Garen and Alawi have unfortunately fallen off a cliff this patch. They just feel pretty terrible overall with several issues and underperforming items, so they may be ones to avoid unless you like playing on hard mode. Well, let's have a look at the top lane tier list, and in the S tier we have Aatrox, Akshan, Gwen, Jax, Kayle, Mordekaiser, Poppy, Quinn, Singed, Teemo and Trundle. As you can see, the S tier is mostly dominated by AP picks with some exceptions along the way. You've probably already seen tons of Trundles in your game, so I don't need to mention just how OP he can be. Don't forget, if you do want to stay up to date with all the best top lane builds and runes this season, then click the first link in the description and head to our website. Here you can see 4 of the highest performing builds for every champion. For example, the most popular, the highest win rate, and some off-meta or alternative build options too. Then all you gotta do is click import to client to send it straight into your game and get the runes and champion select, and the items in the in-game shop. Let's move into the jungle now, and there's some pretty obvious outstanding picks you can play here. Bel'Veth feels like she was born for this new Voidy Summoner's Rift, with her Voidlings and the Void Grubs ending games quicker than ever before. And that's in a meta of games seeming to last a hell of a lot longer than usual. Her item choices are solid, she ganks well, she clears well, she takes out objectives easily, and she's just a great pick to play as we predicted. The strongest AP picks to play in the jungle right now are Evelynn and Lilia, who just feel a little bit OP. But honestly, you can play plenty of other AP junglers too, like Brand, Diana, Echo, Elise, Gragas, Talia, and even Teemo too, and you'll still have great success. Lethality items are also feeling kind of broken this patch, especially with the recent buffs in 14.1b. And there is simply no better jungler to abuse these than Rengar, who is winning a ton of games. With the new buffed Hubris and then of course Profane Hydra and Opportunity, it just feels a bit absurd. You can also build these kind of items on other junglers like Blue Kayn, Kha'Zix and Briar, but Rengar definitely feels like the most abusable. Graves and Nocturne are up there with the big guns too. Master Yi comes back into priority with his usual Blade, Guinsoo's Kraken and even experimental Hexplate build, and now that Jax is just that strong, he's even a top pick in the jungle too. So let's have a look at the tier list, and in the S tier we have Bel'Veth, Briar, Evelynn, Graves, Ivern, Jax, Lilia, Master Yi, Nocturne and Rengar. Yes, despite Ivern still not really being played that much, he proves he's here to stay with one of the best win rates in the game. The A tier is jam-packed full of amazing junglers too, like Vi, Trundle, Viego, Xin Zhao, Kindred and Fiddlesticks. And these picks are all performing really well this patch so far too, just not quite as consistently across all ranks as those in the S tier. The B tier picks like Amumu, Jarvan, Nidalee and Talon just aren't doing quite as well at the moment, but I'm sure Riot has plenty of other changes planned in the next few months. So feel free to subscribe to our channel and we'll keep you guys in the loop. Jumping into the mid lane next then, and plenty of changes here too. AP Assassins are seriously proving their power in the centre of the map, and with the strength of items like Storm Surge, they are very hard to beat. Champions like Echo, Fizz, Akali, Diana and even Gragas are just one-shotting carries in half a combo, so give them a go. Scaling control and artillery mages like Victor, Wei, Syndra, Orianna and Xerath just aren't quite as good so far this patch. Now their items are pretty solid, but with so many assassins running around in the jungle and in the mid lane, there's too much mobility and burst damage for them to deal with. Two exceptions that do stand out though are Anivia and Cassiopeia, who are having a pretty consistent time so far in the mid lane. These champions in recent seasons have been very reliable picks, and it looks to be staying that way for the time being. AD assassins in the mid lane didn't do quite as well as the AP ones though, as picks like Neferi, Talon and Zed all just feel a bit worse to play so far. And they've even had a few buffs already in the hotfix patch to try and help them out. The infamous anti-balance duo of Ryze and Azir make an appearance back into the tier list this week, and we've added both of these into the B tier. But if you can play Azir well enough, he feels really good. So he's up there in the top tiers in our high elo tier list, which you can check out over on our website. So let's have a look at the mid lane tier list, and in the S tier we have Akali, Akshan, Echo, Fizz, Nico, Talia, Twisted Fate and Vladimir. Twisted Fate's global presence, strong items and ability to influence games has carried over from the end of last season. There's some new A-tier additions in the mid lane this week with Rumble, Kayle, Kennen and Gragas coming to join the party. And if you do want an underrated pick, Kennen mid has been pretty OP for quite some time. The B tier is mostly full of champions that just haven't really found their groove yet. Maybe they don't have the right build, or maybe they just need a little bit of love. Speaking of needing a little bit of love, let's go down to the bot lane and take a look at how the AD carry meta is shaping up so far. Well, the general consensus from the player base is that AD carry mains are now more depressed than they've ever been before. The role is harder to play because there's so much damage in the game, so you can get blown up in 0.1 seconds. Red side bot lane brushes don't really feel too good to play with, and void grubs mean your support abandons you half the time and leaves you in the bot lane alone to reconsider your life choices. So if you are fed up with the meta, then you can just play mages in the bot lane instead, with picks like Seraphine and Swain winning a ton of games here so far this patch. However, if you are like me and you're a sucker for pain and far too stubborn to play anything other than an AD carry, then the best options are mostly those that can really abuse the lethality items. That's Draven if you are good enough, but also Jhin, Misfortune, Samira and even Caitlyn, Lucian and Neela too. Misfortune is a bit of a demon though, with one of the highest win rates in the bot lane, and it's not hard to understand why. When her Q deals half your health bar and her ultimate can genuinely disintegrate entire teams. Twitch and Jinx are also pretty strong here at the moment, albeit a bit more situational than some other picks, but if you get the right matchups and lane for them, they can definitely pop off, especially with the right enchanter by their side. There's a bit of a divide with opinions on hit AD carries like Varus and Kalista. In low elo, they really aren't doing that great, but in high elo with the combination of Terminus and Jaxio, they're definitely having some more success, and some regions and some pro players rate these picks very highly. Aphelios was also super OP in 14.1 due to the lethality changes, and he was actually above 50% win rate for the first time in years. But Riot were like no thank you and nerfed him in 14.1b, so sorry guys. So let's take a look at the AD carry tier list, and in the S tier we have Draven, Jhin, Misfortune, Samira and Seraphine. A bit of a weird mix of champions to be honest, but you can kind of tell that it's mostly lethality that wins out here, as expected. On the other hand, Karthus didn't perform at all as well as predicted, and he was actually one of the biggest losers in the initial patch. Vayne does move down from S to A this week too. Now she's still great in the right lanes and if she gets a hit, but with so much burst and wave clear in the bot lane, she can really struggle to get through the lane phase in a lot of different matchups. Finally, let's have a look at supports, and just like most roles, some things were expected and some things were very unpredictable here. However, one thing is for sure, and that's that the new support items feel pretty damn OP. We've even seen teams stacking those world atlases across multiple roles in the same game, so let's hope that doesn't catch on. The new starting item system here brought 5 different options, and most of them feel really strong, especially Bloodsong, as it's essentially an Evan Shroud with a sheen. And if you partner this up with Imperial Mandate on champions like Bard, the damage is absolutely crazy. Speaking of Bard, he's emerged as one of the best supports this season so far, with the new item combinations making him feel like he can 1v1 enemy carries and roam around the map chime picking and influencing games no worries. Bard has always been a great support pick in the right hands, but right now he's definitely up there with the best picks in the entire game. Melee tank supports like Blitzcrank, Maokai, Rakan and Rel are also seeing fantastic results so far this season, with the new Trailblazer and Zeke's Convergence just feeling so good for early roaming, teamfight impact and all-round durability. AP poke supports like Lux, Xerath and Vel'Koz have fallen down a bit this season though. Zaxax feels pretty good and so do their AP items, but again there's just too many assassins and hard engaging supports in the game for them to safely function and do their thing. Sustained supports like Sona and Soraka are still viable in the right games, but other picks like Nami, Renata and Karma are definitely struggling a bit this patch so far. Generally speaking, the squishier the support, the harder they are to play this patch, so if you are struggling, stick with the bulky ones and you might just have a bit more success. There are a few exceptions of course though, with Janna and Senna staying in the S tier alongside Bard, Blitzcrank, Maokai, Rakan and Rel. Other strong melee picks like Alistar, Braum, Leona and Taric are all definitely up there too, just a little bit more situational. Plus I even played against a full AP Alistar with a Storm Surge the other day, and that was a pretty interesting experience. The hooking supports, Thresh, Pyke and Nautilus aren't quite as OP as the main man Blitzcrank, but still great options if you do know how to play them perfectly. Melio is a solid alternative option in this meta so far too, bringing tons of utility and just a great overall pick alongside those carries like Lucian, Caitlyn and Jinx. Well, that brings us to the end of our patch 14.1b updated season 2024 tier list video. Don't forget to let us know down below on how your climb is going so far, and head to our website over at mobalytics.gg for all the best builds, runes, guides, counters, combos and more. Thanks to everybody for watching, and as always, take care.